All right. Hello, hello. How are we doing, Shelby?
Happy Friday. I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I'm good. Thank you. And excited to have everyone here today. Just a little overview of what we're going to be talking about today. I think it has come up at least once in every conversation we've had recently when we talk about user risk, that users are not just humans anymore. They are now what we refer to as agentic AI or non human identities. These new tools that we've been able to have access to our systems, to automate tasks, to potentially share sensitive information. And so, from a GRC perspective, we obviously need to think about how do we actually govern these tools to make sure that our information is safe and our organization is not opening up unnecessary exposure while still remaining innovative and moving forward with new tools we have access to. So, we are very lucky today to have Shelby Tallent with us. Shelby has pioneered the way in AI GRC. She's built this out at Alaska Airlines. She has built out her own policies. She has been meeting with people across all organizations, nonprofits, and spreading the word very charitably about what people need to be safe about. So, Shelby, I'd love to turn it over to you. Before we get into this topic today, can you just give a little background on kind of where you've been, what got you interested in this space, and how you are spreading the word about AI safety now?
Yeah, of course. I'm so excited to be here. Appreciate it, first off. Secondly, I am beyond thankful to have an opportunity to even be in a role like AI governance, risk, and compliance. This was not a position that most people saw in the last few years. And I was beyond just, grateful, appreciative to the leadership at Alaska Air Group for prioritizing and making this happen. For me, the reason I got into this space was I was actually on the AI development side. I was embedded in data engineering, data science teams, and led AI and data strategy for a lot of product offerings across the space. And I got put into a couple compromising positions where I saw we were prioritizing revenue and shareholder value versus consumer protection. And I was like, man, I'm starting to see machine learning, data science start to go into a more agentic AI space. Someone needs to be there to help identify these risks and make sure that we're protecting our consumers, protecting our brands, building that trust. And I was like, I think I can bridge that gap. So I think that's why I hopped over. Little fun fact about myself as a kid, and as a tiny kid, I wanted to be the first female Secretary of Defense. I think that my ethos as a human is doing the right thing, and I automatically want to protect others, and just really like focus on really who we are as humans and how do we hold ourselves accountable, but how do we also manage our work life balance. I feel like AI is a good tool to do that. So I always tie that back to like, even though I'm not the first female Secretary of Defense, I am kind of a Secretary of Defense in terms of AI for the company that I work for. I want to protect them. I want to protect our customers, and I want us to do the right thing and approach AI from a responsible and ethical perspective.
I love that. And I think that's kind of been shown in the way that you've developed your own role here at Alaska Airlines. It's been cool in our conversations. And just a little background for the audience. The reason that we're having this conversation is because Shelby and I always talk about these things. And every time we're talking, I'm more amazed by the things I'm hearing. So it's like people have to hear this. Um, but can you talk a little bit as much as you can share about what this actually looks like in terms of integrating this into the team? It's not just adding a new member to the GRC team, but it's teaching others, it's involving this in business processes. It's, not just being the department of no, but enabling people with the right tools they need to actually be successful and not cause harm. So can you tell us a little bit more about what that looks like for you?
Yeah, so I would first say, like, one, how do you define agentic AI? Then I'll go into how we kind of
Perfect.
operationalize it. But really, for us, like, agentic AI very practically is any system that can take action on behalf of an enterprise. So not just generating that content. So the moment an AI can trigger like a workflow, call an API, modify data, or exchange or execute changes using like delegated access, it becomes an actor in itself, not an assistant to you. And I feel like that
Mhm.
distinction really matters because our governance model at Alaska Air Group is designed around who is allowed to act under what conditions and what safeguards are in place. those same expectations apply to human operators. So we're not differentiating them. So what we've done here is we've actually drafted some AI agent security standards, and agents that are treated as non-human identities. We have explicit lifecycle ownership, approval, monitoring requirements that we tie into that development lifecycle that we have. I think the biggest thing is we always tie it back to um, our safety and our integrity. We have to draw clear lines when risk like materially changes. And we want operational excellence. So teams need to know exactly when government requirements escalate and when there's going to be higher levels of scrutiny. So it's a two-way street. One, we do need explicit guardrails in place, but two, we need the humans to still follow those expectations. But that goes with anyone who works in a GRC space. We write policies and standards. How many times do people follow them? I will say with Agentic AI, if you're following the checklist, it's actually once you have the guardrails and the controls in place from an agent perspective, I do have a good level of confidence where we are headed.
And is that because it's a little bit different than humans? You can give humans procedures, you can give them policies and best practices to follow. But at the end of the day, every time they do that, it's them doing it with a different state of mind, people doing it with a different goal in mind as well, a different purpose, maybe different levels of urgency. But if you're giving actual policies or workflows to technology, it's more likely to follow those consistently.
More likely. I will say that there's some use cases that people have heard about where agentic AI is circumventing a policy or circumventing access. And I think it comes down to when you are development an AI solution, especially agent to person or agent to agent, you really need to look at what controls there are, and there needs to be detailed monitoring and explicit testing of those agents before you even push it to any type of production environment. You really want to understand it. You need to be red teaming it. Um, I would even encourage you to have an internal beta with people to test how to actually work with that agent before it's widespread. Because again, sometimes with these emerging Gen AI technologies, there's some gaps that you don't know until you actually run across that edge case. And then when you run across the edge case, you need to go back and put a new requirement in place or put a new control in place.
Okay, that makes sense. And do you find people maybe even unknowingly not going through this process, whether that's through a new browser plugin that they're using? I know on the marketing side, the tools are endless. We've seen so many. There's a new tool a day I'm excited about here, but you have to take a step back and say, which data are we actually allowing it to see, not connecting it to other systems, making sure we have the right process in place. That's because we're a security company, so we're highly aware. But do you see any employees that are kind of doing things because they're excited and they're looking to do a good job, but that might be circumventing that process that you're putting in place that we should be aware of?
We do see this across the industry. They'd like to call it shadow AI.
Okay.
I actually think that shadow AI, which is AI that is unauthorized, happens when you don't have strong guardrails and you don't have strong AI enablement. For us at
Mm.
Alaska Air Group, I work in partnership with our third-party risk team that runs our supplier assurance program. And we also have cybersecurity architecture as well as data privacy looped into that process. So anytime anyone wants to work with a new software solution, it goes through this vendor assessment and we look at everything. But sometimes people don't go through that process. So again, it goes back to educating. Also, we have to pair that with our cyber ops perspective of for the people who aren't going through the right process, how do we monitor for that? How do we catch that? And how do we make sure that we're updating our kind of authorized and unauthorized lists and making sure again that we're circling back and setting those clear expectations with those employees. Sometimes it might be a knowledge gap. Sometimes it might just be they were unaware. You always want to address it like someone has positive intent at first, and then if you need to move forward, then you pull in and you go about it the right way with your business partners. So.
I love that attitude of assuming positive intent because I do think a lot of what people are doing right now to stay up to date, especially people who maybe have been in their careers for a while, or people who are just getting started and trying to leverage technology that they can very quickly understand, are doing this because they want to contribute to the organization. They're not doing it to cause harm. But yeah, that balance between we need to make sure we're doing the right thing. We need to also make sure that people aren't too scared to come to us if they do have questions or they're unsure if they're doing the right thing.
I lure people in with candy. It really works. I'm a big Formula One fan, and I have a popcorn helmet. I put Sour Punch straws in
Okay.
it, so I entice people to come talk to me every day. I give them a piece of candy, and then when something hits the fan, I'm like, "Here's a piece of candy. Let's have a tough discussion." I don't know if that's going to work long term. I might need to switch up the candy, but I do try to be a friendly, familiar face, and I'm not just coming in like I'm going to shut something down. So I do want to hear people out and understand what their perspective is.
Okay, I love that. I want to bring up a kind of more specific topic, and it's around least privilege. So I think for a long time, when people thinking about the typical systems that we've had access to, they think about providing humans with the least privilege access. It used to be zero access or zero trust to start. Now it's least. It's what's reasonable on the human side. Now, if we think about the same rules and same logic that we're applying to agentic tooling and agentic users, do you think the same process kind of applies of start early, kind of like that beta process you were talking about previously?
I definitely think everything needs to start with the beta process. I actually
Mhm.
say there's a statistic out there. A lot of people quote that 95% of AI POCs fail. I actually think a majority of those
Mm,
95% are actually experimentation or just research. So I think that there needs to be a separate bucket where people, especially with agentic AI, especially if they're testing out new workflows, do experimentation and research, make sure that does it even have enough of what you're looking for to be a technical, is it technically feasible, does it align with that workflow, and then move into a full proof of concept. For least privilege for this, I would say it can't be static. At Alaska Air Group, we view RBAC, which is role-based access controls, as
mhm,
defining what an agent is allowed to do, while we also have ABAC, which is attribute-based controls that defines like governs when, where, and under which conditions an agent may act. I think that long term, that combination allows us to enforce separation of duties dynamically, and
mhm.
prevents agents from executing those high impact actions unless specific attributes, risk thresholds, or even human in the loop conditions are met. So we've put those in both our AI agent security standards. We also have a model context protocol security standard, where we talk about that. But I think the biggest thing is we have those set up, especially if you're working in tandem with like code development with agents, making sure you have that repo sensitivity, branch protection. There's defined model approval statuses. You understand the timing. The biggest thing is here is with least privilege, no unchecked authority across the board, whether it's a human or AI. And I also think that like context matters as much as capability here. So I do encourage people to really go through and do that research and experimentation before you move into a true proof of concept. And you start to iteratively work through kind of like what are those use cases for the workflow, but then what are those edge cases where that's where an AI agent could probably circumvent something or go off the path.
Okay, I love all of that. And I think it's super actionable, which is awesome. And I'm thinking about we have this incredible GRC audience and group that you are a part of. And so you came from a background of AI engineering. So you have this very technical perspective on this space. What about people who came from who might be technical as well, but are within the GRC space? They're understanding the shift that's happening in this industry. And maybe a lot of this sounds very overwhelming. It's very different than the type of items that we used to focus on even just a year or two ago. Where would you recommend getting started? What are the most important elements of that foundation if they then want to get to the things you're talking about with RBAC and attribute based controls and very technical monitoring across the board? Where do we start?
Well, first off, I challenge everyone to understand what their learning style is. Are you someone that learns
Mm,
hands-on? Are you someone that learns by seeing, or do you need something to be talked out with you? Once you understand that, going down those paths. For me, I'm very much a visual learner. So if I'm going to approach learning something where I may have not deployed an emerging new Gen AI technology since I've been out of a AI development type of role for 2 years now, I'll actually go to our AI engineers and say, hey, I'd love for you just to walk me through um, a demo of this and how you created it. What tools are you using for this? What's the type of code? What are the things that you've thought about? And then I can ask questions. We actually have a fantastic group of individuals that work in our AI and our data science teams, where we actually have a weekly AI backlog intake meeting, where we have individuals across all of our different AI and engineering teams, data privacy, and then myself with AI GRC. And as things come in, we actually get left of design. So we can come in and say, hey, we actually think this is a good use case. We believe that these potential requirements might be in scope. Let's have a follow-up discussion. We'll actually include those in helping you when you are working through the high-level design of this, even before we have a full
Mm.
product requirement document or even high-level architecture. And I appreciate the partnership with our AI and data science program management and development teams because most people don't do that. I've worked at quite a bit of companies, and usually they only come to GRC when they want to get something approved to go to production. And then that's when you see delays and there's that lack of context and then there's frustrations, which I feel like we're trying to mitigate that early on. Let's get all the frustrations and the confusion out in the beginning, get through the design, and then we have a happy path going forward.
Oh, that's fantastic. And it seems like the culture within your environment is pretty unique and pretty powerful because for people, and I'm sure that's credit to yourself and to other team members who have built this kind of hands on understanding this is the psychology behind how people want to build, how they want to work through things, how we can be as productive as possible. Um, I'm wondering how that culture is built. Does it stem from the top? Do you find that this is something leadership is also thinking about? Let's start there. Is it something that you do see leadership is starting to
Oh my
be more
goodness.
concerned about with this area? Yeah.
Yeah, they are. I ran our AI governance council all through last
Okay,
year.
great.
And then this year they said we want to get closer. So we're actually going to do a federated model and we're going to have an enterprise AI governance council that's above you. At first I
Wow.
was like, okay, I'm not too sure about that. But all of the members that are across that team, one, wanted to make sure that I wasn't the only one that was accountable to everything from an AI governance risk compliance standpoint. And
Huge.
also they are experts across every part of our business. We have people who are in operations. We have people who are in finance. We have people who are in our supply chain management. They have a different viewpoint to what's going on at our business. And so it directly ties into really how we have this enterprise AI governance model. And it goes back to our shared values, which at Alaska Air Group, our shared values are posted on every wall. We have 4 shared values. Every employee knows them by heart. The first one is own safety. I've already talked about that a little bit today. 2 is do
Mhm.
the right thing. 3 is be caring and kind. And 4 is deliver performance. Those are our values. We don't have 16, we don't have 30, but I think what we want to do is focus on one, connecting our guests to the world with this remarkable travel experience rooted in safety, care, and performance. And if you think about that statement, even if you are in GRC, we care about safety. We care about
Mhm.
the individuals who may be impacted by potential cybersecurity incident. We care about the performance of our business and how we're showing up for our guests. So for us, it's internally to guide how we work as one team, but externally to guide how we show up for everyone. So we have a lot of
Mm.
shared moments and we speak about those openly as a business. So it's really top down. And I think that's why I've enjoyed working at Alaska Air Group so much is because the culture is everything. And even with us acquiring Hawaiian Airlines this past year as well, it meant so much to me to see that they kept that brand separate from Alaska and that wasn't going to go
Mm.
away. And it's because they cared about that shared culture framework, as we call it.
Oh, I love that. That's huge. And I think, you know, it's a mix of hard work and luck that you end up in that environment where your goals are supported and also you're seeing a true impact that you're making. And I'm curious, I think for teams that maybe aren't seeing that same support from their leadership, maybe aren't seeing as much interest in governing this space, what are the items that you find resonate most heavily or that you think if were brought to other leadership teams at other enterprises might gain their interest, might pique their interest to actually start to be involved in these types of initiatives.
Well, I think it starts with risk. I think if
Mhm.
you can clearly articulate what the potential risk of utilizing AR and tie it back to your specific industry's business impacts, that
Mm.
language is going to speak to your leadership because they may not speak in technical terms. They may not understand your specific workflow, especially if you're working with like financial data. Maybe you're in the fraud industry. Maybe you work in the grocery industry. Everyone's going to have different terminology. But if you tie it back to how is this specifically going to impact our business? What does it look like if things completely come to a stop because of AI? What are the potential compliance concerns associated to this? How is this going to impact us internally? How is this going to impact our guests? And you have those really honest, candid moments in the way that you're describing it and speaking to it. I think that that speaks volumes. So really kind of think of like what your AI risk framework is going to be.
Okay, I love that. I love that. And if you think about that, whether that's from the board level, the executive level, or just employees throughout the organization, as people start to think about this space, do you see any common misconceptions about what this looks like right now in terms of overall agentic AI and how that relates to enterprise risk? Is there anything that you don't see that people are consistently understanding about the risk here or
Yes.
about use cases?
I definitely see this because I'm in a great position where some days I get to actually be embedded in our data science teams and our incubator teams and seeing actually what they're developing. And then other days I may actually be in the room with people who are executives. So I think that the biggest disconnect that I'm seeing or misconception is that model risk equals enterprise risk. With agentic systems,
Hmm.
identity and access failures dominate. So like a content policy won't stop an overpermissioned agent from doing exactly what it was allowed to do at scale. So again, I think that's why like our agent standards that we have heavily focus on identity governance, monitoring, kill switches, not just acceptable use language. It comes down to that controls must be enforceable, not aspirational. Because really, real
Hmm.
controls prevent costly rework and incidents. But I think that like if people are so focused on model risk, and we're not thinking again about those business impacts from an enterprise risk level, you're only getting one piece of the pie.
And it really does have to go back to what does this mean in financial terms as well for the organization, right? Because I think no matter what, you can tie that back and get interest for most parties at the organization. Because no matter what, that's going to affect budget, that's going to affect people's pay, that's going to affect overall enterprise growth. So I like what you're saying about tying it back to key metrics because it's very important that those things are very visible and not just seen as probably what they've been seen as a little more in the past in the GRC space, which is kind of more, check the
Yeah.
boxes and then we're done. This is very specific and the impact is very direct.
Yeah, we deeply care about the brand. Our brand is everything to us. It's everything to our customers, and it's our
Mhm.
responsibility to do the right thing and make sure that we are operating safely and we're delivering on that promised performance.
I love that. I want to do a little bit of a shift over to future thinking. If you think about, let's say, let's limit it to the next 12 months, which probably even still feels like a very long time for now. Let's start here. What are the main things that you see changing in this space?
I love saying this, but if anyone watches Love Island, I always say like,
Yeah.
uh, move out the way, chatbots. The new it girl has entered the villa and it's AI agents. But even 12 months
Yeah.
from now, agents are going to shift because right now, most of our AI agents are agent to person. Most people don't have true workflows that where they have a group of agents handing off to each other and then delivering something to that final human in the loop. So I think as most people are working on their technical maturity, and they're ensuring that they have those controls in place, we're going to see in 12 months' time full agentic workflows. And I actually think that a majority of individuals who maybe previously had two or three team members doing all this work, you and your team members are going to have 3, 5, 10 agents that you have doing different tasks. And you're going to be kind of an agent leader, not a people leader, but an agent leader of making sure that you're monitoring and you're looking at the outputs and you're moving things forward in those manual processes that you have. So I truly think we're going to get there. One of the biggest gaps that I see is we see a lot of these agent control panels popping up as vendors are creating like how to manage
Mm.
them. I'm not seeing them show how to manage agent to agent workflows right now. I'm only seeing just an agent registry, how that one agent connects to APIs or certain data flows. But what does it look like when you have 3 to 5 agents in that workflow?
Yeah, and people aren't prepared for that yet.
Not
Interesting.
yet.
So for people who don't yet have the skill set, which is probably near zero, what do they have to do to start to educate themselves? How do they start learning how to become a great manager of non-humans, agents that are working together? And what do you think are the
Well,
key items they'll have to learn to track?
I don't think it's just people who don't have the skill set. I do think that sometimes there's limitations on where your organization is from a technical maturity standpoint. So
Mm,
I want to take a step back there. You have to understand what is technically feasible. And I think that
mm,
being able to move quickly is really built on the foundation that you have good governance and like controls in place, and you're following those security best practices. We're finding out that there's a lot of things that people weren't following where we had policies, or maybe we didn't have all of the controls in place. And people were like, well, why do I have to follow this now if I'm using an AI agent? I didn't do this before. They're like, why is AI a catalyst to this? And I'm like, that is an unfortunate part of us moving quickly, but with an agent, it's just such a larger blast radius. It can do more in a shorter amount of time. So we really have to pause, take a breath, and look at what our technical maturity is. And then from there, you can layer on going and learning and building your skill set for that. I definitely encourage people to go out and learn vibe coding. I encourage people to go
mm,
build their own agents in their free time. Um, I think one of the coolest examples I heard from an individual in our marketing team was they get really tired of figuring out what to cook, so they built an AI agent where they literally just take a picture of what's in their fridge, and the agent will just automatically come up with 2 to 3 recipes and even instructions on how to move forward with making that recipe for them, because they are completely their executive functioning at the end of the day is all used up. They don't want to think about what
yep.
they need to make, and I thought that was really smart.
Oh, I love that. And exploring that on your own is huge. I know that is something that we have fully embraced on our team here. And it's something that we get very excited about. People come in the morning, they're like, oh, well, I got really excited over the night and I built this. I know I talked to my family, they speak about the same thing. I guess, kind of on that note, when we talk about AI, a lot of times when we're talking about it in a work environment, we think about how do we make this meaningful for people? And a lot
Mhm.
of times, if you think about even from an executive functioning perspective, what matters to people most? It's the safety of their loved ones. And
Yeah.
so, is there anything in terms of applications here? There's plenty when it comes to generative AI, but even with agentic, is there anything that we should also be teaching our loved ones, whether that's our family members, whether that's older or younger family members, especially students who are now growing up and learning these types of things? Is there anything that you would encourage employees of your organization to go home and talk to their families about?
I would say definitely talk to them about the safe use of AI, because sometimes they our family members or loved ones, they go and just create their own out of the box access to whether it be Google Gemini or ChatGPT or Anthropic. Tell them to go into the settings. Actually, like see if the information they're putting in, do they want it to feed back into their general purpose model? Do
Mm,
they want your history to be stored? What are the specific controls that you have in it as an individual, so that you have that comfortability in working with an agentic or an AI chatbot every single day? And I think that's priority number one. Because again, how many times do we go to a website and we just say accept all cookies? Or you're signing up for an account and it says accept these terms and conditions. Do we actually pause and read all of the
mm.
details that are in those? Not all the time. So I actually think actually that's a good idea for an agent. Let me create an agent that every time I need to go do this,
Yeah,
I'll capture the terminology and see if there's a red flag before I agree to anything. But going
that's
back
a
to what we're
fantastic
talking
idea,
about,
by the way. Yeah.
talk about the safe use of it, because I do think that this is just like when we saw the creation of the internet and just Google search in general.
Mhm.
Most people did not want to use it at all. And finally, 3, 5 years later, people were like, okay, finally, I'll give it a try. And they jumped in. And now everyone, I don't even think anyone ever questions about saying, I'm going to go Google something. Now, the majority of us don't actually use Google, potentially. We may be using a different browser, but that is the terminology because is
Mhm.
what originated kind of like how to do a search on the internet. And I think that's how AI is going to be. I do think that since ChatGPT was probably the first one in the space, people were like, "Oh, I just went to ChatGPT." Okay, maybe in the future it's not ChatGPT, maybe it's a different offering, but I feel like that's where
Yeah.
we're going. Um, So yeah, I encourage people to be thoughtful about how they use it. The other thing I worry about, and I wish people would educate on, over reliance. Don't just take an output.
Mm.
I had a great sit down conversation with my boss, and she was like, "Yeah, I actually started getting really tired of talking to my chat GPT that I feel like I'm arguing with it more often." And I was like, I love that because you're challenging it. But also that means maybe you need to switch the model of the version of the model that your chatbot is running on. Because sometimes it has so much context relevance in it and it saves that data and it's going off like what you've had in your conversation history. Sometimes every 6 months, I just switch either the provider
Mhm.
that I use as my chatbot or I switch the model. So then I have a fresh start and it doesn't have that kind of it's almost in a way of like there's so much context relevance that it's almost like unconscious bias in a way.
Yes, and it can sometimes kind of keep you in the past too. Because I know in an
Yeah.
environment where our positioning, our branding, our language, it changes and evolves quickly because we're in a startup environment. So sometimes, I mean, I'll do things like build internal bots that can answer any business development question that you need, right? But 3 months later, that may not be accurate anymore. And even if you try to evolve that same bot, because it's been trained so long on those questions and responses, you find the quality is diminishing based on the new information that you're using.
Yeah.
It's almost
It's
keeping you in a
completely
past version.
Yeah, it's completely opposite of data science because for any
Mhm.
data science model in the past, you would need to run it 30, 60, 90 days to tune the model
Mhm.
to get it to a high enough level of accuracy. Because most agents or chatbots are built on top of databases, and you have those databases are grounded where they have in the past year or so really gotten well at reducing the amount of hallucinations you're seeing.
Mhm.
All of that data that's coming out is pretty accurate. The things that subject it to change are the context and how you're talking with it and how you're changing maybe your decision making. But if you're not constantly updating the knowledge base, that stuff gets
Mhm.
outdated. So again, I
Yeah.
challenge people to think about looking at the sources of that material and not even just the output. Like, is this something that is accurate? I mean, we've seen potential lawsuits pop up because people just
Mhm.
took the output of whatever was in their chatbot and used it for either a medical or a legal reasoning, and it wasn't 100% accurate or it was out to date. So people need to have accountability for still quality checking things, being the human in the loop. I tell to people all the time, this is your opportunity to show what your superpower is as a human. If you're not great at X, Y, and Z, great. Let's build an AI agent to do that. But the things that you are fantastic at, don't automate that. Let people see that and really shine who you are.
I love that because it can be hard. There was some joke I saw. It was like some meme about AI, and it's like kids in 20 years, which I don't like making fun of kids, but you know how it is. I guess things evolve. Like kids in 20 years when ChatGPT isn't working and they were asked, their name was called in class and they have to check if it was their name, you know? But it does become this passive thing where it's like you don't use multiplication for long enough. You almost like you look back and you're like, oh, how do I do that again? Because I have a calculator on my phone. The skills that you're actually really good at or that like show that you shine in can diminish if you over rely on technology. So I think that's a really good point. Remember the things you're good at and make sure that you're not just kind of diminishing the value by automating it through
Yeah.
a bot.
But there is a positive that if there's things that like, especially if you have an accessibility need, AI
Mm,
agents or even chatbots, there's some great functionality that can help people. Like personally, I'm dyslexic, so my grammar has
mhm,
always been horrible. It's been great to have it just look at the structure of the way that I've drafted a lot of my policies and documents and make sure that like, hey, this reads clear to someone who may not be neurodivergent. So I've
yeah.
really appreciated that. I really struggled with my documentation writing at one of my previous jobs, and I was like, man, I feel like this is going to be like the end of me. And I don't have that anxiety whatsoever anymore. But also,
Oh, that's
I do need to
amazing.
challenge myself that like not everything that I do right has to go through AI. I can use it to like gut check or check tone or structure, but again, people want to see my thought process and who I am. If everything starts sounding the same across the board, then we're truly are cogs in a machine.
Hmm. Yes, absolutely. I think you kind of with that point led me to actually the last question I have here before I open up to you to anything that you would like to add. Um, on a positive note, if we think about this innovation, it is very exciting. Outside of the risk, there's a lot that's coming out that's going to enable us to do so much that we couldn't do before. So in the next 12 months, just like I said, how do you expect it to evolve? What should we be concerned about? What are you most hopeful about? What do you think is going to be the coolest thing we're going to see, or the most innovative or groundbreaking area of agentic AI?
I think it's going to be the accountability piece. I feel like, and this is probably a biased opinion, but a lot of things in cybersecurity or even GRC, we don't get investment in until something goes wrong or there's some type of sentinel event, because the blast radius is so big and there's so many potential risks with this. I do think that we're going to see a bigger amount of investment in kind of how we govern and handle these risks and how we deal with things from a compliance perspective. So I do think that once we get there from a technical maturity standpoint, we're going to be able to have really robust monitoring and observability. We're going to be able to identify potentially when there's an anomaly or a potential issue and mitigate it in real time. But I think it goes back to one, a lot of the things that we do in GRC can sometimes be aspirational or checkboxes.
Mm.
With agentic AI, that's no longer going to be the case. For us to truly have safe and secure AI, we have to be upfront and center with setting those controls and those guardrails. So I think it's an opportunity for GRC to truly become a higher priority than probably it was in the past. So I'm not saying it hasn't been a priority for all organizations, but we know that usually companies like to invest in product, like developer productivity or revenue generation.
Yeah.
I do think we're going to see a need to invest further from a security perspective. Whether we then come up with agentic cars that are completely making our food for us, or it's flying vehicles, we'll get there. But I do think we need to have that human in the loop, and we do that by making sure that we have the strong governance, risk compliance teams, and having a good posture there.
Huge, huge. It's making things tangible, and it's making it real
Mhm.
and data driven, in an area that has been a bit more generic, a little bit harder, kind of a black box to see into until something goes wrong. And that's the same excitement I've seen from other GRC members on our council too. Is all the projects that they've always wanted to do but haven't been able to get support on, people are begging them for now. So
Oh my
I'm
goodness.
super excited to
I've
see that.
I have started to become best friends with my other leaders in the space
Yeah.
because
Okay.
AI truly is a catalyst to a lot of things that people want an investment is. The challenge
Mhm.
is, how do we actually make sure that we're prioritizing the right things, because it's AI is a catalyst across everything. So I think that goes back to, and I'm going to harp on it, doing really good experimentation and research before you move into a POC phase. And then from there, you
Mm.
can quantify. Then, if you hit your success criteria at a POC, then you move forward to production, because experimentation and research is all about technical feasibility, and is this even capable of getting me the value that I want to work towards.
Amazing. And that way you also don't burn bridges from a budget perspective. If you take on a lot of new tools because you're excited and you burn a lot of cash, but you're not seeing the results that you want, then that could lead to a decrease in trust over time for future budget.
Yes, and I like that you said that, trying to really move forward with the tools only that you need, because for me, there's so many agentic solutions out there that it is getting complex to be able to manage that. So that's one thing that is, a space and an opportunity that, like, I'm trying to figure out in the next 6, 12, 18 months is, as this scales and as this expands, what do I need to do to support that?
Awesome. We're coming up just on time here, but I want to hand it over to you. Is there anything else you'd like to leave our audience with here? This has been so valuable, so informative, tangible next steps that people can take, which I love. So if you were to wrap it up here, any final words, anything you want people to know?
Yeah, I think when talking about agentic AI, it goes back to, all of us, we're kind of forced to operationalize trust. You can't put a price on trust. So for Alaska Air Group, it's about, with agentic AI, it goes back to that RBAC and that ABAC of how we translate values into enforceable guardrails for our autonomous systems. Governance isn't about slowing innovation. It's how we protect our people, our guests, and the trust that they place in us. So I really challenge everyone to think through how to move forward in a safe way. And if you're not already, how do you bring people from your GRC or your security teams left of design before you've already completely come up with your product requirement documents, before you have your high level architecture, you're already in development? How do you get someone in early enough that says, hey, can you help me make sure I'm not missing anything from a security or compliance perspective here? And I think that will help streamline it even more.
Amazing. Perfect final words. This was awesome, Shelby. Thank you so much. I encourage anyone who's watching this to please connect with Shelby on LinkedIn. She posts things all the time that are very informative, that keep us up to date on the space. I know that I definitely value it. So, Shelby, I'm so glad we got to get one of these conversations actually recorded so we can share it and give our people value. And of course, you are busy. So I very much appreciate your time and hopping on with us today.
Yeah, of course. It's been a pleasure. I'm again so appreciative to be in this role, have this audience. If people have questions, feel free to reach out. I will answer them as time allows, but I'm very excited to see how this role emerges in the space and how many other people kind of help flourish and create what an AI GRC looks like in the future for other businesses and industries.
Awesome. Sounds great. Thanks, Shelby. And
Thank
thank
you,
you, everyone, for
everyone.
joining. We'll see you soon. Bye.